The war in Sudan has been going on for 2.5 years now. And despite a humanitarian truce, the killing continues. What you might not know is that the war is partially funded by one all-important commodity: gold. Sudan in the last decade has become Africa's third largest gold producer, next to South Africa and Ghana. But unlike those countries, the gold in Sudan is seen as a currency for arms. According to a report from SwissAid, an estimated 50 to 70% of Sudan's gold production is smuggled out of the country each year, mainly to the UAE. That's because the collapsed economy since the war has led to an unregulated market, allowing warring parties to profit. Now, the war is between two factions: Sudanese Armed Forces, or SAF, led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, led by Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, known as Hemeti. The RSF is a paramilitary group that have been accused by numerous international bodies and human rights organizations of widespread genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. The RSF's opponent, the SAF, is a de facto military group. That's since Sudan's former authoritarian president was overthrown in 2022 after a wave of pro-democracy protests. Hemeti and Burhan ended up at odds. And that's where gold became central to the conflict.
Gold represents the most important source of foreign exchange and revenue. And that is not the same in other countries, so it represents at least over 70% of the total revenue of the country.
And it's especially valuable in today's market, where it's worth around $5,800 Canadian per ounce. Essentially, the country has been split in half, with the RSF controlling the western side into South and Central Sudan, while the SAF controlling eastern and northern Sudan. And each controls part of the gold mining industry in the country. So how is gold being used in the war? And how much of the gold ends up in the UAE? Let's start with the Rapid Support Forces. They hold control of gold production in Darfur and Kordofan, the western part of Sudan. They have since expanded their use of gold production across the Darfur region. A report by the UN panel of experts on Sudan says 10 tons of gold valued at $860 million were extracted from the Rapid Support Forces controlled areas in 2024. Olivia Bueno works for the Sudan Transparency and Policy Tracker. She has written multiple reports on the use of gold as a commodity of war.
It's widely understood that they are transporting their gold to UAE, which refines it and sells it on to much of the rest of the world, and that they are in return getting weapons and other critical supplies such as fuel.
And Dubai in the UAE is considered the city of gold. It's a massive hub where gold is refined and melted down, making tracking its original source very difficult. Now, despite claims that suggest their involvement, the United Arab Emirates has denied giving any support to the Rapid Support Forces or any other group involved in the war. Now, if we look at the RSF's opponent, the Sudan Armed Forces, they control gold production in these regions. And the experts we spoke to say it's making its way to the UAE as well. And it gets there through the SAF's ally, Egypt. Now, tracking figures on gold reaching Egypt is difficult. But the Chatham House report suggests roughly 60% of gold production from northern, River Nile, and Red Sea states are smuggled to Egypt.
From the government side, more and more is going sort of informally across the border with Egypt. It's desert, it's not very well controlled. That gold is going into southern Egypt, where it gets sold on either to Cairo, through Egypt's ports, again, mostly to UAE.
Now, on top of gold funding this war, which reports say over 150,000 citizens have died from, the extraction and distribution of the gold is dangerous and sometimes deadly. How dangerous is that? What does it look like for people living there?
The production itself is one of the most exploitative in the world in terms of any kind of mineral production.
Khalid Madani has studied the role of gold in Sudan for years and says violence is often used to protect mining areas.
In other words, if you do not actually go to the mines and produce this gold, we will kill you or your family.
Talal Mohammed Mustafa worked in the mining industry in Sudan before the war, where he was part of the Sudanese organization to protect the environment. He says there is simply no regulation of mining activities, but many people have joined the industry after the war to make some kind of revenue.
They use mercury to extract the gold from the rocks. The mercury is running freely in the environment after use. The main material used to extract gold in organized mining is cyanide, sodium cyanide.
You do see things like higher risks of birth defects in areas where mining is occurring because there isn't any control over how these chemicals are being used.
This year, a group known as the Quad, that's Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and the US, was assembled to try to hammer out some form of peace in the region. But the experts we spoke to say their economic interests in Sudanese gold production is making it even more difficult to negotiate.
The important point here is that the same countries that are being brought together are the countries that have these economic interests and strategic interests in Sudan.
Meanwhile, both the UN and UNICEF say the humanitarian situation in Sudan is dire, with continued widespread killings of civilians, including children. And experts tell us that the path to regulation of the gold sector in the region is far off.
We call gold in Sudan the greatest devil. Mining in Sudan has moved from a source of prosperity for the Sudanese people, providing them with jobs and a source of income, to a curse and a big problem for Sudan, a problem that we'll be bearing the consequences of for years to come.